Joining me. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me this morning as we go through this breathing workshop. So I'm super excited. We're going to go ahead and get started. Again, this is being recorded, so I'll be able to send it out to everyone, those who weren't able to join us this morning. So in the presentation, I'm going to kind of cover what we're going to go over and all the different topics. And then we get to do the workshop. So it's fun things. We're going to move around. We're going to work on some breathing and stuff. So I'm going to share my screen. And with these slides, I don't want to go into depth too much. You can read through the slides as much as you want and go back through them. So we're just going to kind of break it down into a brief presentation. I really want to focus on the movements we have in the presentation, but I need to explain the why behind the movement. So, if you've worked with me at all or been on my Instagram, I'm big on breathing. It's super important and life-changing to me. And that's kind of why I want to share this with you. It's something that postpartum, even in life, even as in my younger self, I wish I would have known the importance of it. And I don't think we really appreciate that, until we get our postpartum and we realize what the symptoms are of not breathing correctly. All right, so I'm going to share this PowerPoint with you, and we're just going to kind of go through it. Okay, I'm going to put it into full mode. Okay, go back to the beginning here. All right, so welcome again. Breathing 101. This is our August workshop with Mama Said Move with me. So again, thank you so much for joining me. All right, so what will we cover in this workshop? We're going to cover a lot. Like I said, we're not going to go too in depth, but we do need some background information in terms of why is my breathing different now postpartum? A little bit of anatomy overview. What are the benefits? I don't want to just give you breathing, but there is a reason why breathing and breathing correctly is important. Some things that you might see postpartum that are hindering getting that good deep breath. We're going to talk about belly breathing because that's been a big topic in this realm. 360 breathing, which is what we aim for. We're going to talk about a little bit of rib mobilization, managing pressure, matching the tasks. These are all very important things once we master the breathing, and why breathing correctly is key. And then we'll also touch on troubleshooting the breathing. Okay, so if we're having a hard time breathing correctly, why is that? What can I do? And I'm going to give you some exercises, and we're going to go through those today as well. All right, so is breathing really that important? And that is the why behind this workshop and really the main focus. So this is where the question we are looking to answer in this workshop. Is breathing really that important? And hopefully at the end of this, you'll be able to give me your answer in terms of whether or not you think breathing is really that important. All right, so what happens during pregnancy? What happens that affects our breathing? And there's a lot of different things that are going to happen. So as our belly grows, those ribs are going to move out. The diaphragm, which is right under the lungs there, is going to flatten. And I'll show you a picture too to visualize that and why that's important. The organs get moved around, they get pushed up, which also contributes to that rib flare. And we also see a posture change. A lot of times you'll see that sway back posture. We're trying to account for an extra weight in the front that we're not necessarily used to, okay? So we also get less back body expansion. So our back tends to tighten in order to counter the weight in front. And so we'll get less expansion through the back. So during pregnancy, when I work with my prenatal clients, we work on with breathing is getting that back body and side expansion. We want to keep those ribs moving. Our lungs are under our ribs. So if our ribs are moving, that means our lungs are moving. So that means we're breathing correctly. So keeping that deep breath as long as we can. It gets really hard because there's not a lot of room in there. So inhaling through the nose, keeping that good deep breath, staying connected to those lower abs with that exhale is really key during pregnancy. And when I work with prenatal clients, that's what we're going to work on a lot. Now, postpartum. So what are we going to work on postpartum to get that breathing pattern back? We're going to use the breathing to reconnect to those lower abdominals. So as the baby grows, if we're not staying connected to those lower abdominals, doing that diaphragmatic breathing, we're going to lose that pathway. Okay, our brain essentially kind of shuts down that pathway because we haven't used it. When you don't use something for a long time, it's going to need to kind of wake back up. And that's what we're going to use to do with breathing, is to wake up those lower abdominals. We're also going to try to get those ribs back to a 90-degree angle. This is going to be very important because the rib angle is going to determine where that breath is going. And I have a diagram later in the presentation to show you. So the goal is to get back to 360-degree breathing. And again, I'll explain kind of what that is here. And I'm actually going to have you guys walk through what that is as we go on with this presentation. All right, so quick anatomy overview. I don't want to overload you with this, but I'm going to use these words a lot, and I want you to kind of be able to visually see what they are. So in this picture is the diaphragm muscle. So you'll see here it kind of sits under the rib cage, right under the lungs. And you kind of see how it's curved upwards. And so as the baby grows, when I was talking about, we're going to get that flattening out of that because it's going to be able to curve as much with less room. So the primary muscles, which is what's important, is the diaphragm and those external intercostals. Secondary muscles. So one of the main ways I can tell if you're in an incorrect breathing pattern is clients will come to me and be like, hey, my neck hurts so bad. Like these muscles, the scalenes, the pec minor right through the chest, the sternocleidomastoid, the serratus anterior, those are all secondary muscles, okay? And they are smaller muscles. And so they take on that work of breathing. You're going to experience some pain, right? And that's when we're breathing in. These are the muscles that should be working, are those primary muscles. We want to avoid using the secondary muscles. Yes, they're going to work, but they should not be a primary mover. And if they are, that is where the pain is going to happen. And then when we breathe out, so when we talk about using those exhales, hey, look, we use those abdominals, right? Those abdominals, which is what's in the picture, is that deep core muscle, the transverse abdominis. Those are the muscles we're going to use to exhale, also the intercostal muscles within the ribs. All right, so that is why we focus on breathing out. That's how we connect to that core. Let's see. All right, really quick, we're going to the benefits of deep breathing. I'm sure you've heard these before. They're very publicized. The parasympathetic nervous system, that's the one that actually helps us relax. Okay, so if we're using those primary muscles like we're supposed to, the breathing should be relaxing. But if we're not, and we're using those little muscles, then that breath is going up. We're in that paradoxical breathing pattern. You're going to be in a fight and flight response, which is not going to be helpful, right? Again, we're going to experience neck tightness. We're never going to get that nice, relaxing breath. Okay, so that's a benefit of deep breathing, is to activate that nervous system where we can actually relax. Also, we're going to experience less tightness because we're using it correctly. And then the diaphragm expansion is going to give us the ability to lengthen that pelvic floor. Okay, and that's super important postpartum. Diaphragm slow. All right, so the things that can impact the ability to get a deep breath postpartum. We kind of talked about this a little bit when we talked about rib flare. So not having that rib cage at 90-degree angle. Look where the breath is going to go, and a lot of times what you'll experience is rear pelvic floor tightness because that breath is pushing towards the front of the pelvic floor. Also, the vice versa is that as upper abdomen. I'm an upper abdomen, so I can relate to this. That's where I hold my tension. So I tend to kind of hunch over, pushing that breath to the back, and then you could experience some frontal pelvic floor tightness. That's why it's important that we're up and down. We want to, whenever I work with clients, I constantly heart ribs over hips. And this is why. So we have ribs over hips, that breath is going down. We're getting good lengthening throughout the entire pelvic floor. It's equal pressure down and then as we come up. Okay. So these are some of the things postpartum that we can experience. Now, I had a client recently come to me and she was breathing and it was a big belly breath. And she's like, well, I just completed a program and that is what they told me to do. And in this case, that was a little bit detrimental because she did have a diastasis. And so when we're breathing through the belly, we're putting more strain on that linea alba. So that's that line that runs down through the middle. It connects into the deep core, but also to those six-pack muscles at rectus abdominis. So if we are belly breathing, I am putting constant pressure on that linea alba. That is what we want to avoid postpartum. Okay, that linea alba has already been stretched and then we don't want to constantly be putting that kind of pressure outwards on it. Okay, so no, I don't try to promote belly breathing. It is a little bit of an art finding the in between though. Okay, so finding the ability to not breathe all the way up into the chest, but also finding the ability to not push all that breath out through the linea alba, out through the belly. Okay, it's really, 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 really going to focus on moving those ribs. Okay, so we're going to hit right in between with this when we talk about taking a breath. So to the workshop part of this, we have a little bit of background now. And so let's take a deep breath. Everybody wants to sit nice and tall, Indian style, whatever's comfortable, and take a deep breath. All right. Now this time when you take a deep breath, I want you to kind of see where that breath goes, okay? So just a little more aware, in through the nose, mouth. Okay. So which way did it go? Did it go up? Are you in a paradoxical breathing pattern? Did it go down through the belly? Did you feel that belly really expand and come back in? Or are those ribs moving, right? Which is where we want to be. But let's really pay attention to that because that's going to kind of determine which exercises we're going to move forward with here. All right, time to get to work. So what are we looking for when we're looking for rib movement? So we're going to first talk about lateral rib movements here, and I'm going to switch back to the camera so I can see you. So we're going to talk about lateral rib movement to start. And with lateral rib movement, so that's these side ribs right here, right? We're going to think about it as if they're a handle on a bucket, okay? And what we want to do is we want to lift the handle, okay? So the handle doesn't come straight out, right? The handle doesn't, it comes up, okay? So when I inhale, we always want to go through the nose, inhale. I want to lift those bucket handles. Okay. And we're not going to really focus much on the exhale today. That's going to be a different workshop when we talk about connecting to those lower TBAs, those lower transverse abdominis. But today, what we're really going to focus on is that inhale, so getting that good breath down. So the first thing we're going to talk about is that lateral rib movement. And anytime I set up breathing exercises, I like to do it this way. 2 fingers on the ribs, 2 fingers right underneath. Okay, so kind of find your sweet spot there. And then I'm going to wrap these thumbs around back. Okay, so first thing we're going to look for is that lateral rib movement. Inhale, see how we're lifting that bucket handle, and exhale. Good. And we're just going to let that exhale go. So how do I get these ribs moving? One of my favorite exercises is the ha breathing. And what you can find a little bit postpartum is those ribs are a little sticky. So we want to unstick those ribs, and I can kind of manually help do that. So what we're going to do is find a comfy spot. I got my mat set up over here, and I'm going to just lay down on the mat. Nice and comfortable. So if you need something to put a pillow to put under your head or anything under your legs, that's fine. The goal here is just to be comfortable. So we're going to lay down, and what we're going to do is we're going to take all of our hands and we're going to press them on the top of our ribs. And what we're going to do is we're going to give me a good inhale. Try to push out against those hands. And as I exhale, I want you to kind of help the exhale and push those ribs together. Inhale, feel those ribs come out. Exhale, push those ribs together. All right, what we're doing here, as we exhale, I want you to make the ha noise, okay? So we're going to go inhale, exhale, press those ribs together. Now, this is one of my favorite exercises when we're talking about rib flare and really getting those ribs to move postpartum. So ha breathing. So that's going to really help us with that lateral rib movement and getting those ribs to mobilize, kind of unstick them a little bit. So as I exhale, I'm going to go and push those ribs down together. Get them moving out and in. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share one more time here. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. So we talked about rib mobilization, the ha breathing. So now we're going to talk about the importance of managing the pressure. So this is the container model. And with the container model here, we're going to talk about the diaphragm and the pelvic floor. So the top here is the diaphragm, the bottom is the pelvic floor. So when we talk about why it's important to manage the pressure, the abdominal cavity is filled with pressure. This pressure is responsible for stabilizing the spine, which is super important, especially when we're lifting heavy. We need to stabilize that spine. We have to protect the spine. But postpartum, it's important to figure out how to manage this pressure. So we can help use this pressure to lengthen the pelvic floor, right? So if I have pressure within here and I'm getting a good inhale and this diaphragm is pushing down, I'm going to help lengthen this pelvic floor. The key to a strong muscle is lengthen and then the ability to contract, right? If we are unable to push that pressure downwards into that pelvic floor a little bit, then we're not going to get good lengthening. And all you might be stuck in that contraction, which is going to lead to that tight pelvic floor, which is something else we want to avoid. We want a strong pelvic floor that's not too tight, but not too weak. It's also, if we're experiencing prolapse or diastasis, DR, how we manage the pressure will play a factor in managing those symptoms. Okay, pressure is always going to go to the weakest area. So if we are experiencing a diastasis recti, that would be the linea alba. That's going to be that line between the six-pack muscles. And with prolapse, that's going to be the pelvic floor. So we will do a workshop on both the diastasis DR and prolapse. I just want to touch on a little bit here why it's important to manage that pressure postpartum, especially if you're having these symptoms. This pressure is always going to try to escape through the weakest area. So if that weakest area is the linea alba, when I push down, that's where it's going to push out. And if it's the pelvic floor, it's going to continue down through the pelvic floor. All right. So you have practiced your 360 breathing, but we're still having some problems. All right. Why can I get my back ribs aren't moving? Why are my lateral ribs moving? How do I get the breath to go down? And I'm going to share a little bit with you. Again, we're going to come back to doing some work here. So first, let's start with some back body expansion. So why can I get those back ribs to move? And that's super common postpartum because we talked about it, the posture, right? So if I was pregnant, I'm carrying more weight in the front. Well, what's compensating, right? Those back muscles, right? Those back muscles are having to compensate for that belly. So a lot of times what I'll see postpartum in postpartum women is that back is super tight. So how do I get back body expansion? I have a couple great exercises. One, I would not recommend so much for prolapse if your symptoms are intense. The other one is great. So we're going to start with child pose breathing for back body expansion. I don't like to use a pillow sometimes just to get a little more expansion out of this. Okay, so we're going to take that pillow. We're going to sit on our feet. We're going to take that pillow in under our belly, right in those ribs, right below that chest. And I want us to lay down, relax our head, walk your arms all the way out. All right, now what we're going to do is take that deep breath, and I'm going to think about pushing through the back. So what I'm creating here, and this is great if you're working with a diastasis and not getting back body extension, which is super common as well, is create pressure on one end so that the breath will push out the other, right? We're going to go to the point of the weakest place. So we want to push through that back. All right, so I'm going to walk it out. Inhale. Press through that back. Big exhale. Let it go. Doesn't have to be big exhale, just let it go. Again, get some good back body extension. This should feel really good, especially if your back's a little bit tight. And we're going to exhale again. We always want to do 3 to 5 breaths. Again, we're deep breathing. Always take your time standing up, but you shouldn't feel lightheaded. All right, if you're feeling a little bit lightheaded, that tells me the breath's probably not going where it needs to go. We need to work on pushing it back down, okay, rather than breathing up. The other exercise that I'd love to do with back body expansion is a deep squat. All right, so you're going to need, really you can use whatever, a door handle, a sink also works well here. What we're going to do is we're going to sit down into this deep squat. Now, if you are working with a prolapse, I would start with child pose, okay? Just because this tends to be in the deep squat, we're going to have a little bit of pressure down. And one way we can modify this is in the deep squat, we can sit on something. So if you have a block or a small box to sit on. All right, so this is a modification here. We're going to push our chest into our knees. Again, if you need that pillow, you can use that as well. And we're going to breathe into that back. Inhale through the nose, exhale. Good, just let it go. Again, if you want to advance this exercise a little bit, eliminate the block. Reach nice and tall. Inhale through the back, exhale, let it go. All right, so those are two of my top favorite exercises for getting that back to move. So you did the 360 breathing. Right, we were here, but your thumbs didn't move at all. My thumbs tend to not move as much because I actually felt really good doing the back body switch. My back tends to be a little bit tighter. So get those thumbs moving. That's the troubleshoot there. Those two exercises are my top exercises for back body expansion. All right, you're not getting lateral rib movement, so we're not lifting that bucket at all. What am I gonna do? All right, here's an exercise. We're gonna do the side laying breathing. Again, I like a pillow if you're really struggling with this. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna lay down on the side. I'm gonna tuck that pillow up under the bottom rib here. Again, nice and comfortable. If you need a towel or anything rolled up, you're welcome to do that. We're gonna place the hands right on the side of the ribs. So all 4 fingers on the ribs, the thumb are wrapped around back. Now I'm looking for this, right? I wanna push those ribs. I wanna lift that handle. So inhale, exhale, let it go. Do you see how my elbow goes up and down? That's how we're gonna get those lateral ribs moving, okay? We're gonna try to get those ribs moving in all directions, all right? And then switch, and of course, do the other side. Now, if you are dealing with a little bit of unresolved rib flare, especially on that left side, which where it tends to be because we have more organs. So if I flip over to my left side, what you can do on the exhale is help those ribs move down a little bit. All right. So this is a little bonus for the rib flare community out there. All right. So we're going to put those hands right around those ribs, right around the bottom of the ribs. Okay. So my pinky's hitting that last rib. Inhale. Again, elbow should move up. Exhale. A little bigger exhale. And kind of push those ribs down and together. Left, exhale, ribs down and together. Okay, so inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth. All right, we talk about breathing. All right, so we troubleshooted that back body extension. We're going to troubleshoot the lateral rib movement with the side lying breathing. But what if I can't even get it to go down? Like you're sitting here and you're like, all right, I can't get this breath. Like, what is she talking about? Like all it does is here, right? All right, this is gonna take time. You've probably been in a paradoxical breathing pattern for well over a year. And so to change that habit, something we do subconsciously is gonna be practice. You know, start by lying down at bed at night. That's when I would practice. Or sitting on the couch. I would do 3 to 5 breaths. Start small too. So don't try to get this huge breath. No, nice and easy. Little inhales, little exhales. Just getting those ribs to move and start moving. Start talking to my brain. Okay, got to get that breath going down. Get that breath into those ribs. Visualize the lungs pushing on the ribs. Practice. And some patience, right? Because it's going to take time. We're relearning a habit. You're relearning something that your subconscious was already doing. You're trying to reteach it to do something completely different. So be patient with yourself, but practice. You know, if you're sitting in a car ride or line, do 3 to 5 breaths. You know, sitting and lying are going to be the easiest ways to start. Standing is super difficult. Okay, so start by sitting, start by lying, start with small breaths. Okay, and really work that breath down. So, of course, I'm always open for questions too. So feel free to comment, email, message me. You're like, oh, this is going wrong when I'm breathing. How do I fix that? And I'll give you whatever exercises I have in my toolbox to help you do that. All right, we're going to go back to the PowerPoint one last time, and then we're going to finish up this presentation. Thank you guys so much for coming and going with me. We're going to cover one more really important topic because this is what I see clients come in and they really struggle with again. So make sure you follow up here. All right, let's go back to this. We covered the troubleshooting, different exercises there. So is it really that important? What do you think? What is your answer? Do you think breathing really is that important? And my answer obviously is yes, and I'm going to guess your answer is yes if you took the time to watch this presentation and go through this workshop with me. So one thing I do want to touch on, and something I've seen with moms come in, is everything we do is this like giant exhale, giant inhale. That doesn't necessarily need to be the case. And, that's kind of why I touched on like just taking those small breaths. Breathing needs to match the challenge. Okay, so passive breathing, when we're just sitting on the couch, it doesn't have to be a big breath. It just needs to be a small breath in and a nice passive exhale. I don't need any abdominals. I don't need that core working in this case. So again, in this presentation, we worked on mostly the inhale, but we are going to incorporate that exhale when we talk about exercise. So if I'm doing light exercises, warming up, inhale with a little more and inhale with a little more exhale. Okay, so we do want to get a little bit of that abdominal contraction. So I cue zipping up the core. And this is like a really loose zipper, super easy, like one of those little nice plastic ones that are just whoop, zip right up. Little inhale down, exhale, nice and easy. Now, if I am lifting something heavy, then I need a bigger inhale to set up that pelvic floor. Say, hey, we're getting ready to work here. And then a real big exhale to help lift that pelvic floor and give it as much support as I can. All right, I like to explain this in terms of the task of the weight of the child. So if I'm picking up my baby, nice, easy, 7-8 pounds, it doesn't need to be a big exhale. It can be a nice light exhale. All right, picking up my toddler, we're getting a little bit heavier, right? 20-30 pounds. I'm gonna need a little bit exhale. All right, you're picking up your kindergartner, your 40-50 pound kid, big exhale, right? Think about meeting the task with your breath. So the smaller the child, the less breath. The bigger the child, the bigger the breath, because I need more support for that pelvic floor. We got to get rid of some of that pressure, provide that support so that it's not pushing down on the pelvic floor, which has carried us through 9 months of pregnancy. Okay. So with that, I am done. Again, the most important thing to remember about breathing is it's going to take time. Okay. And so give yourself time, give yourself patience, continue to work on it. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out with me. Stay up to date for our next workshop in September. I look forward to meeting with you all again. I am going to come back to the camera one last time so that I can say bye. Again, I am open to all questions you may have about this workshop and happy to answer those. So feel free to reach out. All right, let's stay in touch. Thank you.